Hello, and welcome to Subfloor Stories, where we have conversations around faith and culture. I'm your host, Angie Ring. And can I just tell you that for our first episode, so far, recording has gone off without a hitch. Oh, death defying joy. Written and. Why do I keep doing that? Anyway. Typically, what you'll hear on this podcast is me interviewing a guest who will share authentically about their life experience. But for this first episode, I've asked my friend Corey to interview me so that you, the listener, can hear a little bit about what to expect during this podcast. Why would you want to tune in? And where on earth did I get the name Subfloor Stories? I hope you enjoy it. Stick around. Welcome to the very first podcast of Subfloor Stories, where we'll have conversations around faith and culture. My name is Angie Ring. I am your host for this podcast. And for our very first episode, my friend Corey Smith is going to interview me so that we can give you an idea of what you can expect moving forward in forward episodes or in future episodes. Corey is a friend of mine who was willing to jump into this crazy endeavor with me and shoot me some questions for the very first podcast. He's also an all around good human and, frankly, one of my favorite people to hang out with. He and his partner are just really good people. So, Corey, with that, I will hand it over to you and allow you to grill me.
Well, thank you first off for having me. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this in your first episode. Excited, and thanks for all the sweet and kind things you said about me. Let's get right into it.
All
So
right.
let's start off with the title, Subfloor Stories. What does that name mean, and why did you choose that?
Yeah, so we have subfloors in our house. The person who remodeled our home before we moved in loved the original hardwood. And so he chose to not lay anything over the subfloor. And so if you know anything about that kind of flooring, they're beautiful, they're original, but they're also unfinished and there's no varnish. And sometimes you can get splinters, which we have. We've dug a few splinters out of our feet on our subfloors. And so I really like the name because my goal is authentic conversations with my guests for them to share their real life experiences. And I just think we can go underneath the varnish, underneath the polish of everyday life, of church, and have real honest conversations.
I like that. I like that. It's very creative, and it's a very approachable title for folks to be able to easily be able to consume what you have to offer. So
Thanks.
why did you choose it? Why did you choose a podcast as your avenue to be able to explore?
That's a valid question. I mean, everybody has a podcast anymore, right?
Right.
I think for me, I love people and I love to hear about people. I love to hear their stories. And I kicked around the idea for months and months, probably actually a couple years, of what's the best format to highlight some of the amazing stories that I get to hear all the time. And so I kind of thought through, like, because I'm on TikTok and I really like the idea of like short snippets of content, but then it's kind of hard to really go heart to heart and go deep in 3 minutes tops. And it's also hard to interview someone because I want to be able to interview people from all over the world. And so flying them into my home office isn't really an option. And so I just thought, yeah, I could do a podcast. I could make it my own. And that each episode doesn't have to be an hour. It can just be as long as folks want to share. And it just seemed like the best way to get some of this stuff out there.
Oh, cool, cool. I'm excited to see what the future brings. So, what kind of content can people expect to hear throughout this?
Sure. Yeah, I think one of the things I love about the title is that you have no idea what it's
Correct.
going to be. It's like, is this like a flooring podcast? Are we going to talk about, right, laying linoleum or whatever? Um, I am super passionate. I love the church. I love the Christian church. I especially love what the church could be. But I also understand that the church is probably at a tipping point in the United States. It's seen its fair share of challenges. So some of the content I really want to highlight are people's experience of faith, both inside and outside the church. Some people are going to have really positive experiences they're going to share, but some people are going to share maybe some things that have been really painful and maybe even some traumatic things that they've experienced in and through the church. So you're going to hear things like that. You're also going to hear content about culture, the LGBTQ community, especially in relationship to the church. That's not super positive regarding inclusion and acceptance. And something I'm really passionate about is affirming the LGBTQ community. And I really think that's what Jesus's heart is. And so we're going to hear some stories about people who've experienced some churches that do that um, and have done that, and then people who have experienced differently. And you're just going to hear some stories maybe about that culture in general. And then also, we're going to have some diversity conversations, some people who work in diversity, equity, and inclusion fields. Some of that's going to have to do with the church, some of that's going to be more culture related. But, I think that we are really a binary society right now, meaning we're very black and white. You're either a Republican or a Democrat. You're either a Christian or you're an atheist. And I think that I might be jumping ahead here, but I think that this podcast can maybe be a bit of a bridge between some of the either or worlds or aspects of our society.
Yeah, you make some very valid points. In regards to kind of our current situation with things being very binary, and I think most of us, if we had time to sit down and talk to one another and get a chance to get to know one another, that we'll be able to find out that that's truly not. We have a lot of similarities. Yeah,
Yeah,
so I can
I
see.
agree.
So, if you wouldn't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself, about your history and your journey, and kind of what brought you here to this moment.
Sure. I have a background in social work, so I was a social worker for several years. I have a bachelor's in social work. I worked in the hospice world for some time. I was a medical social worker. I also worked in ministry as a social worker at a church, and I've done some work in the recovery field and drug and alcohol addictions. And then I went into ministry full time after my social work tenure. And I was part of the same denomination for 20 years. I ended up pastoring in that denomination. My husband and I planted a church. We were co-pastors of a church plant in that denomination. And so the vast majority of my background in the last 1.5 to 2 decades, it has included a lot of ministry. And I'm now a retired pastor, retired social worker. I like to joke, and I'm a spiritual director. And what I do as a spiritual director is I sit with folks as they process their lives, as they process what their experience of God is and what their understanding of God is in their lives. And I love journeying with folks as they become better versions of themselves.
That's awesome. I know personally from my aspect, from growing up in a more strict Christian household and a Christian church, it's been enlightening to be able to just to speak to you about some of the things about religion and about spirituality. So I've definitely appreciate you being able to allow me to be able to open up in those ways.
Oh, good. And I've really appreciated the ways that you have opened up to me. I feel like you and I just kind of connected the first time we met. Like it's like we just became instant friends. And part of that is because we share a best friend, so we knew that we had pretty strong commonalities. But yeah, yeah. Thanks for saying
She
that, Corey.
definitely made that much easier.
Yeah, she did. She's pretty great.
Well, that's all the questions I have for you, Angie. I really, really, really appreciate you having me on. I really appreciate you taking the time to share some insight into what we can expect down the road.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thanks so much for interviewing me and just being willing to kind of go through this with me. I'd love to have you on sometime in the future as being in the on the opposite end of the interviewing process and hear your thoughts. I know that you're very passionate about culture and society and things like that, and I would just love to hear what some of your stories and what you have to say.
Well, just keep me on speed dial. I'll be here for you.
Oh, thanks, Corey.
Of
All right,
course.
sir. Well, I really appreciate you, and I will keep you updated.
Thank you.
All
Take
right,
care.
thanks. Thank you for listening. All aspects of this podcast were produced by me, Angie Ring, with overwhelming support and ongoing teaching by my son, Jairus. The song you hear is titled Death Defying Joy by the artist Andy Squires. You can find his music at Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube. Check him out. See you next time.